Yo, this your boy, the real McCoy, coming at you. Talking about football for all my football fans out there, man. I want to do this video here. I've been talking about football and the NFL draft recently, and I've been saying, this player here, his best position is this, or this guy fits in this scheme and this personnel and things like that. So I wanted to do a video just for anybody out there who may not know any of this stuff. Most of you guys are going to know most of the things I'm talking about, and this video here is about talking about basic football positions, terminology, things like that, personnel, words you hear all the time in football. And I just want to do this video just in case I had got any subscriber or anybody that click on this video here. Just going to be talking about just the basic football formations, scheme, and things like that. Well, two specific formations and schemes, but this is just elementary, basic football. So if you're really well advanced in football, this video may not be for you, and I'm going to relate it to, my Dallas Cowboys somewhat, not much, just a little bit. But anyway, so just basic football, elementary basic football, simple stuff. That's what this video is about, and but let's jump into it. First thing we'll talk about, if you're watching Monday Night Football on ESPN with Coach John Gruden or Mike Tirico, or if you're watching Sunday Night Football with Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth, you might hear the word gaps. The linebacker blitzed through the A gap, or there was penetration up the B gap, things like that. What gaps are, this right here represents the offensive line. This right here is the left tackle, the left guard, the center, the right guard, right tackle, and the tight end. The tight end is usually, for most offenses, is usually on the right side, because most offenses, when they run the ball to the right side. Defenses call that the power side, strong side. Some defensive coordinators may call it the play side. There are 32 teams in the NFL. They might have 32 different words on how they use that. Different coaches have different terminology, but the terminology for the most part all means the same thing. But that's it there in the offensive line. Now the gaps are, you got the center here. Now on the left and the right of the center, in between the guards, that's the A gap. So if somebody comes up the A gap, that's what they're referring to if you hear that on TV. In between the guard and the center, on each side, is called the A gap. In between the guard and the tackle, left or right tackle on both sides, that's called the B gap. Outside of the tackle, or in between the tackle and the tight end, that's called the C gap. Anything outside of the tight end is called the D gap. So if you hear a defensive coordinator say that, this defensive player is responsible for the D gap, that's any outside runs, scratch plays, or runs where the running back bounces to the outside. The defensive end or the linebacker, whatever type of scheme and formation that it is, he's responsible for that gap. That's what that is. That's what gaps are. The two most common defenses that most defenses run as their base defense, where everything else is called off their 4-3, and they'll change it depending on the offensive personnel, what kind of formation they come out with, and number of players. You've got the 4-3 defense. My Dallas Cowboys run that. You've got the 3-4 defense. The New England Patriots, the Denver Broncos run that. Houston Texans, Pittsburgh Steelers, things like that. They run the 3-4 defense. In the 4-3, you got 4 defensive linemen, 3 linebackers. 4-3. Simple. You've got the different techniques, Now, if a defensive lineman lines straight in front of the center, head on with the center, that's called the zero technique. A nose tackle, that's what that is there. Now, if you see a defensive lineman line up in the A gap, in between the center or the guard, that's called the one technique, in between the center and the guard. If you see a lineman line up right above the guards, that's the two technique on either side. It starts at zero. Then the one technique in between the center and the guard. If he's right above the guard, that's the 2 technique. In between the guard and the tackle is a 3 technique. Right above the tackle is the 4 technique. In between the guard and the tight end is the 5 technique. Straight on with the tight end is a 6 technique. Outside of the tight end is a 7 technique. To keep it simple, 7 technique on either side. To keep it simple, if a defensive lineman is lined straight on with the offensive lineman, it's an even number. If in between the gaps, it's an odd number. To keep it simple. Now, how does like my Dallas Cowboys? The 7 technique is usually your more stronger, more physical defensive lineman, and you put him on the strong side of the formation where the tight end is at. Because if the offense run the ball, most offenses they run the ball to the power of the strong side, and you want your you want your defensive end to be strong, be able at the point of POA, the point of attack, where the ball is going to take on the tight end, to take on the tackle. So you want him to be strong and also possess some pass rush ability. For my Cowboys, that would be Greg Hardy. Things like that. Whereas your 5 technique defensive end is more of a pure pass rusher. He has not as strong physically, things like that. His main skill is beating the tackles around the edge and getting to the other, getting sacks. That's what we want Randy Gregory. Things like that. Your 3 technique is usually in the 4-3. Usually, it depends on each coach. They do it differently. Your 3 technique is usually your better defensive lineman, defensive tackles out of the 2. The 3 technique, for Cowboys, that would be Tyrone Crawford. I've been hard on Tyrone Crawford. I thought we should. I've made videos saying that. I thought we should have gave Tyrone Crawford's contract. I thought we should have gave that to DeMarco Murray. But Tyrone Crawford's been playing well at the 3 technique. He's been playing well. He's growing on me. But that's the 3 technique. The W is a weak side linebacker, Will or Willie, depending on the coaching staff, things like that. Your middle linebacker or your Mike, Rolando McClain. Your Sam, your strong side linebacker lined up with the tight end, the strong side. That's where your more physical linebacker, where the run play might be. That's your strong side linebacker. Where your weak side linebacker is more the most athletic linebacker. I've talked about Jalen Smith out of Notre Dame, the middle linebacker. I said if the Cowboys draft him, if they do decide to go that route, I don't know. He would definitely be Will linebacker, really athletic linebacker, things like that. And that's what that is in a 4-3 defense. In the 3-4, so 3 defensive linemen, 4 linebackers, that's more of, you hear people say 2 gap. Things. Some coordinators, they may play the 4-3 and they still play 2 gap. So there's one way to do it in football. It's not like that. Things like that. But in 3-4, you usually got 2 gap responsibilities in the 3-4. 3 defensive linemen that are down linemen and 4 linebackers. You've got your 1 technique or your nose tackle. Most guys like that. Vince Wilfork, we played with the Patriots, the Texans now. They usually line up right over the center, or they may shade over in between into the A gap on either side, depending on which side the running back lines up, things like that. Now, you think Vince Wilfork in the 3-4? I think Casey Hampton when he played with the Steelers. Tony Saragusa when the Ravens played was on one of the head they winning Super Bowls. Haloti Nada, guys like that. Guys who weigh like 330, 340, 350 pounds. They can control the center, and take on a guard in a double team. You get that double team so your linebackers can come in and make tackles. That's the 1 technique or your nose tackle, things like that. And now your defensive ends, your 4 technique on either side, they usually, for the most, usually in 3-4, they line up over the, in the 4 technique over the tackles. And they're responsible, for the B gap and the C gap, 2 gap containment on either side. And you've got your outside linebacker over here, or your strong side, because here's the tight end. So that's the Sam linebacker, or your strong outside linebacker. He may rush the passer, or he may drop back in coverage. Your strong side linebacker. In the 3-4, you've got your Mike, in between the 1 technique or the nose tackle and the defensive end. You got your middle linebacker, usually shaded over to the power side where the running back is. You've got your Will linebacker over here with the defensive end. He's more to the weak side. You're more athletic linebacker. In the 3-4, your Will linebacker is going to get a lot of tackles. That's Ray Lewis when he played with the Ravens in the 3-4. Your middle linebacker and your 1 technique, Haloti Nala and Tony Saragusa, they clog up the guards and the tackle. Your guards and your center, so your weak side linebacker can get a lot of tackles. That's what Ray Lewis is known for. Now you got your, in most 3-4 defenses, they call this guy here the jack. His main skill is to rush the passer. Just like the 5 technique and the 4-3, the jack or the outside linebacker on the weak side, his main skill is to rush the passer from the outside. DeMarcus Ware, and That's what he's best known for. Even now with the Broncos, he's more of the jack. Where Von Miller is more of the outside linebacker. You know what I mean? He has pass rush skills. He can take on the tackle on the power side where the run is. He can drop in, not encourage. Not saying DeMarco Murray. Not saying DeMarcus Ware can't, but that's his best skill is to rush the passer and get sacks. That's why this right here is very important. KYP, know your personnel. When we had Wade Phillips as our coach, we had a 3-4 defense, and DeMarcus Ware was our jack. When we had Rob Marinelli to run the 4-3 defense, I was like, well, what does DeMarcus Ware fit in? Because they tried to move him with his hands, because it's 5 technique and 7 technique in the 4-3 defense. They put their hands in the dirt and rush the passer. That's not what DeMarcus Ware is best. Not saying he can't do it. That's just not what he does best. And he struggled that year, and then we ended up releasing him, and he signed with the Broncos. I just didn't understand that doesn't fit what DeMarcus Ware does. He's a 3-4 outside linebacker. But those are just the gist of the 4-3 and the 3-4 defenses, gaps, things like that. You got the 2 wide receivers, 3 wide receivers, things like that. And that's just the gist of it, so you kind of understand when you watch football what these guys are talking about. If you're watching the football and the commentators say the 3 technique got penetration through the B gap and got and tackled the running back for a loss. 3 technique defensive tackle came up through the B gap and got a tackle for loss. So you guys know what they're talking about. Now, if you hear commentators say that the Dallas Cowboys came out in 11 personnel. 11 personnel is becoming very popular in football, especially in the NFL. What 11 personnel is, you look at the personnel grouping chart here. 11 personnel is 1 running back, 1 tight end, 3 wide receivers. Running back, tight end, wide receiver. One running back, 1 tight end, 3 wide receivers. That's the quarterback here in the shotgun. His heels are going to be 5 yards from the ball, from the snap of the ball, from the line of scrimmage. And things like that for the quarterback in the gun. 1 running back, 1 tight end, 1, 2, 3 wide receivers. 11 personnel. Running back, tight end, 1 running back, 1 tight end, that's 11. 1-on-1's 11 personnel. Becoming very popular in the NFL. Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers love 11 personnel. The Dallas Cowboys, we do that. That'll be Tony Romo, when healthy. Darren McFadden, Jason Witten, Cole Beasley in the slot, Terrence Williams, and Dez Bryant. Very popular in the NFL. My Dallas Cowboys, we do it a lot. 11 personnel is becoming very popular across the NFL. That's why some defensive coordinators and some coaches say that the 4-2-5 defense, I put the question mark because is that the best defense to run as your base defense in the NFL? The 4-2-5 is basically the nickel package in your 4-3, where you have 4 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers, and 5 DBs. But instead of the 4-3 being your base defense and all of your calls are based off that, your base defense, whether they come out in 0-2 personnel or 12 personnel or 10 personnel, no matter what, your base defense is going to be 4-2-5 defense. Some say that's the best defense in the NFL to have your base. With these teams running the Patriots and the Denver Broncos with Peyton Manning when healthy, the Saints, the Drew Brees, mentioned Aaron Rodgers with all this spread off the Pittsburgh Steelers now. They kind of changed from a power team with these guys lining up, these wide receivers all across the board. The 4-2-5 may just be the best defense to run, But now different personnel, different coaches may have different terminology for it. Some may say ace. If there's only 1 running back in the backfield, no matter if it's 11 personnel or 10 or 12 or 13, they may call that ace. Like a deck of cards, ace, 1 running back, things like that. Now the empty set, there's no running back, kind of like it is now, in the backfield, just a quarterback, and that tight end right here will be split out wide, lined up as a wide receiver. That's empty set, 5 wide receivers, things like that. If you hear, Mike Mayock, if you watch NFL Network. Now, if I got to choose between Mike Mayock, Todd McShay, and Mel Kiper from ESPN, me personally, I definitely trust Mike Mayock a little bit more when it comes to evaluating and scouting talent, in my opinion. Mike Mayock loves talking about personnel. He loves talking about personnel, man. But when you hear, him say personnel, do you know what he's saying? If they say 22 personnel, 2 running backs, 2 tight ends, 1 wide receiver. That usually means short distance. 3rd and 1. Something like 2nd and 2, goal line maybe. 23 personnel is basically goal line. 2 running backs, 3 tight ends, no wide receivers. That's like this, 4th and 1 on the goal, or they're on the 1-yard line. And they set up to run. With no wide receivers. So when you hear personnel grouping, empty set, 5 wide receivers. Some may call it 0-1 or 1 tight end, 4 wide receivers, 0-2 or 2, depending on the terminology and the coaching. 2 tight ends, 3 wide receivers. My Cowboys, we've ran that with Jason Witten, Gavin Escobar as our tight ends, and you've got Dez Bryant, Terrence Williams, Cole Beasley. Our Cowboys run that. 10 personnel, 1 running back, 4 wide receivers, things like that. 11 personnel, which is very popular in the NFL. Especially if you have a great running back who can catch out of the backfield. 1 running back, 1 tight end, 3 wide receivers. The Green Bay Packers, they love to do that out of the pistol. With Aaron Rodgers and Eddie Lacy, they love to do that. Things like that. 12 personnel, 1 running back, 2 tight ends, 2 wide receivers. 13 personnel, 1 running back, 3 tight ends, 1 wide receiver. 22. You guys see the chart. That's the personnel grouping. This right here is very important, man. KYP, know your personnel. You have to, that's what I love about Bill Belichick. The great coaches know how to change their system, their scheme to fit their personnel. Putting like Jadeveon Clowney with the Houston Texans. They have him as in a 3-4 defense as an outside linebacker standing up. That's not what he does best, in my opinion. I think Jadeveon Clowney is 5 or maybe even a 7 technique in the 4-3 defense with his hands in the dirt. That's what he was coming out of South Carolina. I don't think he's a hands in the dirt. Rush the passer. Drop back in coverage, things like that. That's why know your personnel is very important. You can't just bring in, any draft a guy or trade for a guy that doesn't fit your system or your scheme. Like DeMarco Murray in the spread. DeMarco Murray doesn't fit that type of scheme offensively. That's why that is very key. That's huge. And then if they come out, in a 0-1 personnel, like the Patriots love to do this here. 1 tight end, 4 wide receivers. You may want to go nickel. That's right here. That's 5 DBs, and that's usually 2 safeties and 3 corners. But if you only have 1 good safety on your roster that you really trust, you may have to go with move 1 of your corners to safety. Then if you go down, that's 6 DBs, usually 4 cornerbacks and 2 safeties, things like that. But if you got 3 safeties on your roster, that's good. And you only got 3 good corners or things. If you got a certain guy who you don't want to take off the field, then you may adjust your personnel, your scheme, your system, or your terminology to fit the type of players that you have. To me, that's very important in football. Know your personnel. Know what type of players you have. That'll determine what type of system that you need to run. If you got a bunch of DeMarcus Wares on your team, then you probably don't want to run a 4-3 defense. That doesn't fit what your players can do. If you got guys like J.J. Watt, he can play a jack. He can play a 5 technique, a 7 technique, a 3 technique, a 4 technique. You got guys like that, 5 technique. You can line up all across the board. Bruce Smith, the Reggie Whites, some of the greats. You can that gives you a little bit more freedom as a defensive coordinator and things like that. So now when you have a dime, that's 6 DBs. So you have 5 other positions that you want to go with. You may have 4 defensive linemen and 1 linebacker. But if you've got somebody like, say, Jalen Smith from Notre Dame, a guy who's very good in coverage, man-to-man coverage, zone coverage, rush the passer, you might want to go, keep him on the field and have 2 linebackers, and 3 defensive linemen, things like that. So it just all depends on the type of players you have, type of personnel. If you're Rod Marinelli and you get a contract extension that Jerry Jones gave him in the 4-3 defense, we're looking for certain type of players to fit your system and your scheme. So this is just a basic football, gaps, techniques, 1 technique, 3 technique, things like that for anybody who may not have known, or casual football fans who just kind of watch the game but don't really know what's going on. That's what this is, man. Video's getting kind of long now, so let me know what you guys think, man. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, all that good stuff. I love talking X's and O's on football, things like that, man. This is just basic football stuff here. And, you know, if just one person learns something, you know, I'm happy with that, man. You know, let me know what you guys think, man. Cowboys Nation, I'm a football fans and all. This your boy, the Real McCoy, man. Hopefully you guys had fun. I entertained you, educated you some kind of way. If not, I apologize, man. This your boy, the Real McCoy, man. And I'm out. Peace.